Hello again. Welcome to the October episode of Let's Talk Miamisburg. Glad to have you with us. I'm Gary Giles. I'm the city's public information officer. Here's what we have in store for you over the next 30 minutes. A little later in the program, we're going to discuss Fire Prevention Month and the local activities that are planned by the Miami Valley Fire District. You'll want to be sure and stay tuned for that discussion. But first, we're going to take our annual look at road construction projects in the community. Joining me again this year to do just that is Miamisburg City Engineer Bob Stanley. Before we get started, we want to remind you that viewers are invited to participate in our program. If you're watching us on October the 12th, you are watching us live. To call in with any questions or comments, just dial 424-1679. That's 424-1679. Bob Stanley, thank you so much for being here and welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Gary. Always good to be here.
Well, let's start just by reminding viewers about the makeup of the staff in the Miamisburg Engineering Department and the functions of your office.
Sure. We're the City Engineering Department, and we're at the Annex Building at 20 East Central Avenue, across from the main city building right downtown. We provide overall cost-effective professional engineering management and technical service for the city. Staff's made up of myself as city engineer. I have two engineering technicians, Bill Monroe, my right-hand man, and Eric Vogel has been helping us out. And then administrative assistant, key position in our organization, Sharon Long, a new employee this year, kind of taken over and just working right in. We manage basically the public right-of-way. Anything inside the sidewalk roadway area, oversee the capital programs, as you know. Asphalt paving, sidewalk, curb and gutter, our bread and butter programs, roadway and bridge projects, culverts, storm drainage when we get lots of rain, and then we support the water and sewer, excuse me, utility construction work around town, and then kind of the day-to-day activities, right-of-way, maintenance, property, street opening, work with all the other utilities in town, ODOT, we maintain the traffic signals, do parking and signage issues, and then really just kind of support all the other city departments and the residents with any engineering type concerns.
It's a lean and mean department. You lost your administrative assistant, your longtime administrative assistant, to retirement this year, and yes. I know she was a big loss for you.
Yeah, Jane had been there 26 years, had just been basically a fixture in our office, and then we were fortunate to get Sharon along. Very seasoned employee, good with the public, and she stepped right in, and we hit the ground running.
Well, Jane Hansel, if you're watching, we wish you nothing but the best, of course. And the office that Bob referred to, that his office is located here behind the set for us here. You see the traffic arch, and then the annex office building for the city just behind that traffic arch on that view. Well, we're coming to the end of another construction season, so let's review the major projects from this year.
Sure.
As part of its annual maintenance program, the city repaves a number of streets in the community. And in 2016, that number was much larger than the typical year. Tell us what transpired and how all that came about.
Well, typically we put out 10 to 12 streets for both sidewalk, curb and gutter, and then paving for the following year. We had that plan for this past year. Due to a couple factors. One was a very good year-end income tax type situation, and then probably more importantly, resident feedback from a previous survey kind of identified street maintenance and infrastructure as one of the highest priorities that they wanted to see taken care of. So we were fortunate this past year. Council was generous enough to allow us to add additional streets, so we basically went from about a 12 street program and actually did portions of 32 streets, an additional 20 streets this year. Represented over about $900,000 worth of paving, almost unprecedented in the history of our programs, and really was about 4 times as large as any program we had put out. A couple key streets in that were Alexandersville Road, Lawrence Avenue, South Gebhardt Church were a couple of the bigger streets, a portion of Rosina Drive, and then we got into some of the older streets that had kind of been, we finally got to, which were Dayquette Circle, Mary Frances Court, Old Main Street downtown, and then we're able to mix in streets that were a little bit newer, but really needed the attention and will last several years from there on out.
Let's put our first picture on the screen if we could. This is one of the streets that you mentioned, Bob, Alexandersville Road, looking toward 725.
Yeah, this was the section from 725 to Maui, residential on the one side, and then to the east is the South Point, North Point Business Park. Very high traveled section of road in between 725 and Maui. 4 lanes with a center turn lane. And again, we were able to mill and then pave and then finish up with pavement markings on that entire section of street.
From 12 in a typical year to 32, that's a tremendous jump. Now, looking ahead, I know budgets change, revenues change. Would you anticipate, looking forward, approaching that number again in the near term, or would you typically drop back to a more normal volume of streets?
We'll be back.
What's the indication right now?
We'll be back to probably a more normal indication. We've got about 15 streets carried over from this past year's sidewalk, curb, and gutter, so we'll definitely do those streets. And then I would imagine there may be a couple more streets added to that. So I think we'll be slightly higher than normal, but certainly not in the 32 range. But again, some key streets, some key areas, and we're finally again moving forward year by year and trying to catch up on that inventory of paving and sidewalk, curb, and gutter.
And you're seeing that street maintenance, like you said, is a priority for council. Let's put our second photo on the screen if we can, and this is some sidewalk work that took place. Now, this is another element of the annual maintenance program, the replacement of damaged sidewalk, curb, and gutter. Bob, wasn't as high a number as the street paving, right?
No, but again, about 15 streets this past year represented about $250,000. Here's a section of curb, again, where all the curb was bad, so we're able to excavate it out, use a curb machine to pour a brand new rolled curb here. That area between the street is then filled in, and then again, we let that it'll set over the winter. You know, we've got some new sidewalks done and repaired in the area, and then we'll come back and mill and pave this street as part of next year's program. So that cycle works well for us. Finish up the sidewalk work with the residents the first year, and then come back the second year and get the street entirely paved and be done until the next time.
Now we're going to be talking about the water and sewer projects that are going on in the community in next month's episode. But that work this year, Bob, caused some pavement damage on some streets in the community. How are those streets being restored here as we approach the winter season?
On several of those projects, a lot of the asphalt restoration or the trench restoration has been done. Again, backfilled, paved, and then sealed edges, and that's just in the excavated area. And then as part of our annual program, working hand in hand with those projects, we're going to come back over the next 2 to 3 years and pave that entire street. A couple of them will need some sidewalk, curb, and gutter work, but a couple of those streets we'll be able to come in, mill them, and then pave from curb to curb and really get a nice, clean, finished asphalt surface in the entire width of the roadway, entire length for the residents. So those projects will probably be some of that extra work that will go into next year's and 2018 paving program.
And that restoration is scheduled to be completed by the end of this month, by the end of October. Correct?
Yeah, and then we'll come back next year in the paving program in the midsummer time frame and do I know 11th Street and a portion of Kircher and Richard and some of those streets again that have seen that water and sewer project work.
Okay. Now switching gears, Riverfront Park is a big part of the city's efforts to boost its downtown district. We've talked about it many times here on the program. It's still a developing park, and early this year there were some improvements that were taking place there. Tell us about that project.
Yeah, that was actually a fun and interesting project and a nice little engineering project. It was actually grant funded from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, ODNR, about a $200,000 grant. And really the essence of the project was a new gateway entryway into the park right off West Central Avenue. I think we're going to have a picture here in a minute. It had some sidewalk, curb, and gutter improvements, able to improve the alleyway into more of a road type of structure. Here we see a pedestrian arch kind of gateway feature as we're looking west into the park entrance. A reconstruction of the Brick Street, the old Brick Street there on West Central, and then what we kind of call an eyebrow or an additional paved area with some additional parking and an area for events. So this is really the first phase of some real infrastructure improvements in the park. We anticipate future phases being the improvement of the alley and the road work from Linden down to Ferry. But this really, I think, kind of set off the area. Again, grant funded, working hand in hand with Parks and Recreation on some landscaping and some very nice amenities for the park. And I think it's been pretty well received with both the events and the usability of the new roadway.
Mm-hmm. You can see where those cars are parked there on the photo. That's that curved archway. You can't really see the road from this angle, but that's where those cars are parked. And you see the band shell in the background and the arch, a nice takeoff, a miniaturized version of the traffic arch that's just a couple blocks away. So it's got a real nice look to it. And events returned to the park when it reopened in June.
Right.
So not a whole lot of the summer season was interrupted by the construction.
No, started right after the first of the year. Once we got into good weather, got into the bulk of the construction, and then, like you said, finished up with the majority of work in the June time frame, and the events resumed all summer from July on.
Now, the plan for the park calls for some additional components down the road. What can we expect in the future?
I think from an engineering standpoint, our main focus is going to be an extension of this gateway feature to both the north and the south, from a roadways perspective, improving the alleyway into more of a roadway pedestrian type of access with sidewalks, curbs, and gutters. And then that'll allow us to take out the old Miami Avenue asphalt and infrastructure, and again, make that more green space, park element type things. And then parks that will be working on other phases of development as funds and grants become available.
Sure. So it's the timeline very much up in the air right now as funds are secured.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
But this was a great start, and I think a well-received project.
I think it was too. Still one project that you'll oversee this year. The public is going to see some work taking place around the busy Heineke Road, Central Avenue intersection. What's going to be going on there this fall?
That's we call it a sidewalk 725 Heineke Road sidewalk improvement project. It's a pedestrian access safety project, really, funded with a majority of Montgomery County Community Development Block Grant funds. It's going to make sidewalk connectivity on the north side of 725, wrapping around to the Heineke side. Really a connection point between the Speedway, Kroger's entrance there, all the way around to where the sidewalks stop at McDonald's. It'll allow sidewalks, pedestrian access there, pedestrian access back into the Kroger's site, and then just some site grading and parking lot improvement. Involves a little bit of guardrail work and a little bit of signage. But the main focus, main emphasis is pedestrian access and walkability and a connection of a sidewalk piece where now it's just a dirt path and right along the edge of the road.
And it gets a lot of pedestrian traffic, doesn't it?
A lot of pedestrian traffic both on the existing roadway and along the road edge. We opened bids today on that construction project. We'll be taking that for City Council approval. Anticipate work starting later at the end of this month, and then the complete project wrapped up by the end of this year and open for use.
Sidewalks went in on the south side of Central. Was that 2 or 3 years ago?
Yeah, about 2 years ago on the plaza side.
Yeah, and this is sort of an expansion of that to improve that
Exactly.
walkability. People like to walk around as much as possible and get outside, and this is kind of an expansion on that.
Yeah, will give us access from Heineke right down 725 on that.
Again, when do you anticipate the work to start?
Probably the end of the month. We'll have to go to council, have a pre-construction, and I would anticipate activity out there towards the end of the month, and then it will be wrapped up before the winter season and before cold weather.
Okay. Well, let's look ahead now to 2017. There was a bridge replacement in the community that was delayed this year. Mm-hmm. Tell us what bridge we're talking about and how that timeline is now shaping up.
That's one of our 11 bridges within the city.
Okay.
We were fortunate to get into a program through ODOT, Ohio Department of Transportation Bridge Partnership Program. Again, I think we're going to have a picture of that. It's the Gebhardt Church Bridge, as you can see there, and that's just north of the Maui Road, Gebhardt Church Road intersection. The project was awarded and started last year. Mm-hmm. Folks saw some tree clearing, above ground utility work. It's one of 4 bridges in ODOT's program that contractor, Brumball Construction, was doing. Ours happened to be the 4th in that succession. So they're going to come back to Miamisburg after the first of the year, be back on site in March, starting the construction. Anticipate about a 3-month period where that bridge will be removed, replaced, and the road will be closed. And then that project will finish up midsummer with a brand new structure, roadway leading into it, a relocated water line, and really just replacing, again, one of our oldest and lowest rated bridges within the city.
Yeah.
And again, completely funded through the Ohio Department of Transportation Bridge Partnership Program. A great project collaborating with the state, and again, Brumball Construction will be doing that work.
Okay, real quick, in about a minute.
Okay.
The city has applied for Issue 2 funding for additional projects in the next year or two.
Yes.
That funding is going to be awarded by the end of this year. Tell us quickly about the city's top 2 priorities for that funding.
Scoring next week through that program with the Ohio Public Works Committee. Gebhardt Church Road along north or east of the high school from Bellevue up to Jesse Lane is one of our road improvement projects. 12th Street Bridge just north of 725 past CVS near the school bus barn. Bridge needs a new deck and some drainage work. It's load rated now. So again, both of those projects out of the 5 road projects submitted are our top 2 priorities. We'll know in November about funding. If we're successful with grant funding on those, design would happen in 2017 and folks would see construction in the 2018 period.
We will keep an eye out to see how that transpires. If anybody has any questions about anything we've talked about here today, what's the phone number for the engineering department?
Yeah, again, we're at 20 East Central, phone number 847-6531. That's to the main number up front. So again, 847-6531, City Engineering Office.
Okay, Bob Stanley, Miamisburg City Engineer, joining us here on the program. Bob, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Gary.
Okay, we're going to take a 60-second break. When we return, we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk about Fire Prevention Month. Stick around. And welcome back to Let's Talk Miamisburg. I'm Gary Giles. Glad to have you with us again, and we want to remind you, if you're watching us on October the 12th, you are watching us live. There is an opportunity to call in with any questions or comments for our guests if you'd like. The phone number here on the set is 424-1679. And joining me now for our second segment is a Battalion Chief with the Miami Valley Fire District, Andy Harp. Andy, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
We always like to have the fire department or fire district represented for Fire Prevention Month, and appreciate you being back with us again. The Miami Valley Fire District, what, maybe 4 years old now?
About 4.5.
Okay.
4.5 years old.
Remind our viewers who you are and who you serve.
Okay, well, we are a merge between the Miamisburg Fire Department and the Miami Township Fire Department. We are doing about 8,000 calls a year out of 5 stations, which ranks us in the top 3 of the Miami Valley for number of calls. We're averaging about 22 calls a day.
Okay.
And what we've decided is, what we found out is what we promised the citizens. We've reduced redundancy, which has improved our response times because now the closest station responds to your residence or your business. We've had a cost savings by reducing that redundancy, and that's what we planned when we merged 4.5 years ago, and we're finding out that that's come to fruition.
For the resident or the business owner, would you say that they've noticed any difference in service whatsoever, except for perhaps a bit of improvement?
No, I don't believe they have. I don't think you would hear that if you talk to the public today. I think we've done exactly what we promised and what we planned to do.
Okay. The headquarters facility for the district is located where your office is located?
2710 Lyons Road, in front of the township offices, next to the new post office. And
And a block from the Dayton Mall.
yes, block from the Dayton Mall.
Now, you were formerly with the Miamisburg Fire Department. How
Yes.
long now have you been in the fire service?
I'm in I'll have my 34th year in December.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Bucket Brigade back then.
Fire Prevention Month in October. This is a national observance, and this year's theme is on the panel behind us here on the set. Don't wait, check the date. Tell us what this theme is all about and the message that firefighters are trying to convey to the public this month.
Well, again, Fire Prevention Month. Last year we talked about smoke detectors, and we talked about checking your smoke detector every month and changing the battery. This year we're going to change the clocks, change the batteries on November 5th. Will be the fall back. So we want everybody to change their battery that day. But this year they're talking about changing your detectors when they become 10 years old. There's two different types of detectors. There's a photoelectric and there's an ionization. The photoelectric uses a beam of light and if smoke or anything occludes that beam, the detector goes off, and the ionization actually uses a radioactive chip. Well, over time, the radioactive chip wears out, the beam becomes dimmer. If you don't clean your detector, you'll get cobwebs and dust and things in there. So they want everybody to be safe, so they're saying if your detector's 10 years old, it's time to put in a new one.
I think you and I talked when we were preparing for the program that this probably applies to both of us.
It does.
So
Yes.
get on the ladders and
I
check
know,
those
yeah.
smoke detectors.
Yes.
Now, your outreach here in Miamisburg typically extends to young people. Is that the case this year?
Yes, it will be. We will
Okay.
be visiting, our fire prevention team will be visiting the elementary schools again this year. We're going to do it a little bit later this year with the fall break that the schools have. Most of the teachers didn't want to start early in the month, so we've moved it back. We're going to be actually out the last 2 weeks of the month, which is a little bit later, but we'll still cover all the elementary schools before the end of the month.
Every building get hit?
Every building will get hit.
Miamisburg and Miami Township?
Every building, every elementary school, K through 5, we gear the programs to the actual age level of the children,
Okay.
which is kind of nice. The older
So
kids
the
get
eighth grader's not getting the same thing that the second graders get,
Oh
right?
no, definitely not, definitely not, because it's all we can do to keep the attention span of the little kids for more than
Sure.
8 or 10 minutes.
But I
anyway.
bet the younger ones, though, I bet they really appreciate you coming in and enjoy a program like that with firefighters talking about something different.
Well, they do, and
Good
we've
reception.
seen good things from our programs over the years. I mean, we go to a lot less children set fires these days. They know that matches and lighters are not toys, and we see adults now out in the public, and they'll come up to me and say, I remember when you came to my elementary school and talked about fire prevention.
Yeah.
And that's what we hope, is that they're carrying those messages through their entire life.
Can you share with us the story about how Fire Prevention Month originated?
Sure. Go back to 1871, Chicago, October 8th. Mrs. O'Leary's cows being milked in a barn full of straw. She kicks over a lantern, and it starts the Great Chicago Fire. Most of the fire actually burned on October 9th. Most of the damage was done on October 9th. It actually went out on October 10th, not because the firemen put it out, because it ran out of fuel and stopped burning on its own. So we had 250 dead, 100,000 homeless, and 17,000 wooden structures burned to the ground. So what happened beyond that then is, here's your useless trivia for the year. President Woodrow Wilson, two-term president from Virginia, 1913 to 1921, the guy liked holidays. All right, 1914, Mother's Day. 1916, Flag Day. 1919, Armistice Day, which we now, President Eisenhower, in 1954, changed that to Veterans Day. And then in 1920, he proclaimed October 9th as Fire Prevention Day.
The father of holidays.
Yes, I believe so. And So he wanted everyone to practice fire prevention, fire safety on that day. Well, in 1925, Calvin Coolidge was president, and he didn't think one day was enough. So he proclaimed whatever week October 9th was in as Fire Prevention Week. And now we pretty much, most fire departments across the country, we have Fire Prevention Month.
Sure,
Because
sure.
we are so busy during the month of October doing fire extinguisher classes and safety days at local businesses and things like that, as well as going to the schools.
I'm sure, well, give us the name of the organization that kind of promotes Fire Prevention Month.
National Fire Protection Association.
Okay, I'm sure they have a website.
NFPA. Yes, they do.
NFPA.
Yes.
So Google that if you don't know
It's
the
a
address.
Government organization. Yes.
Okay, and you can get more information on Fire Prevention Month this year. Again, the 2016 theme, don't wait, check the date on your fire alarm, 10-year lifespan. Okay, changing gears. Halloween,
Yes.
coming up at the end of October. Trick or Treat in Miamisburg will be October 31st from 6 to 8 p.m. That's rain or shine. Andy, what are some of the safety tips? We always like to reiterate this for people, for parents, for children. What should they keep in mind for Trick or Treat night?
Of course, we want parents to go out with their children. We don't want to see the children out there alone. When you're picking out your costume, make sure it fits well. Make sure it's flame retardant. A lot of people will light their jack-o'-lanterns that night. I know people sit out with their portable fire pits at the driveway. Some of them have decorations that have fire effects with them, flame effects, and so we want the kids to be safe. If you can get away from wearing a mask, we would appreciate that. We'd rather you see you use face paint because masks are bad, and they occlude kids' visions. We want them to be just safe when they're out running around. We would like for the parents driving home, since we start at 6 o'clock, there'll be a lot of people driving home from work at that time, to be super careful driving through the neighborhoods. Kids are impulsive. They'll see a street sign or a porch light across the street and they just see candy, and so they'll dash out there into the street, and so we want everybody to be safe on their trips home.
Will your crews be visible on that night?
Yes, we will. We'll be out. We'll have 10 different pieces of fire and EMS equipment out, passing out candy that night. We also would like for the parents to check their candy when they get home. Anything that looks like it's been opened, tampered with, dispose of it, or take it to the fire station. Those guys will eat anything. And but yeah, we will
They're
be
just
out
inspecting it.
Yeah, we'll be out passing out candy. I'll be getting ready to buy my candy here for the stations here soon. I can't buy it too early, or I end up with a line of firemen outside my office door with sad eyes begging, and I want to save some, at least for the children.
Another safety suggestion that I want you to cover for us here in our time remaining, this is fire pit season in the
Yes.
fall.
Yes.
There are some safety concerns in your business about fire pits.
Well, we just want you to be safe when you use them. They are legal. We have information on our website. If you want to build your own fire pit, we have dimensions that are allowed. We know that people a lot of times use the portable fire pits, and those are perfectly legal, but please burn clean, dry wood, no trash, no paper, nothing like that that might flame away, and then of course don't use any flammable liquids at all just to get your fire started. No gasoline, kerosene, anything like that.
Sure. Okay. If anyone has any questions about this material, anything we've talked about, or wants to reach out to the Miami Valley Fire District, let's not only give the phone number for your headquarters location, Andy, but let's give the web address.
Okay, it's 560-2152 is the phone number, and we are at miamivalleyfiredistrict.org.
Okay. Battalion Chief Andy Harp from the Miami Valley Fire District joining us here on the program. Andy, thanks so much. We'll see you next time.
Thank you very much.
We want to remind you that our next episode is coming up in November. We're going to talk about those water and sewer projects. Hope you'll tune in then. I'm Gary Giles. Thanks for watching.